Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Authorities in Nagorno-Karabakh say they've accepted a Russian proposed ceasefire 1 day after Azerbaijan launched a military operation in the contested territory. Peace talks between Azerbaijan and Armenia are scheduled to start Thursday. Yesterday's attack reportedly killed close to 100 people and injured hundreds more. Tensions have been growing in Nagorno-Karabakh in recent months as Azerbaijani forces sealed off its only road linking it to Armenia, leading to major food, fuel, and medical shortages, as well as accusations of genocide. Nagorno-Karabakh is overwhelmingly populated by ethnic Armenians, but is recognized as Azerbaijani territory as part of a Russia-brokered ceasefire following the 2020 war. Protesters gathered in Armenia's capital, Yerevan, on Tuesday.
I hope that finally they can find any solution to this problem, solution that can satisfy both sides and we can live peacefully. That's my opinion. I know it's difficult. It cannot be a decision which will satisfy both sides, but we should come to that. Otherwise, it will continue and hundreds, thousands, innocent people will die.
During the protests, police used stun grenades to disperse crowds trying to enter a government building. Israeli forces killed 19-year-old Palestinian Durgan al-Akhras during a raid near Jericho in the occupied West Bank earlier today. His grieving father decried his killing.
He is an unarmed citizen, a child. He has nothing to do with all this. Duram is an unarmed person. He is a civilian. Whoever walks the street should be shot just because he is one of our people.
1 day earlier, on Tuesday, Israeli soldiers killed another 4 Palestinians, including 3 in the occupied West Bank, in a raid on the Jenin refugee camp, with 20 others injured. Separately, in the Gaza Strip, 25-year-old Yusuf Salam Radwan was shot dead by Israeli soldiers. On Sunday, Israel said it's keeping the Beit Hanun crossing closed as it violently cracks down on Palestinian protests. Beit Hanun is the only operational crossing for Gazans to enter Israel, including some 18,000 Palestinians who work in Israel. This comes as President Biden's meeting Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly here in New York. The Biden administration's criticized the gutting of the judiciary by Netanyahu's far-right coalition government and its plans to expand illegal settlements, though it has not pulled back its $3.8 billion in annual military funding to Israel. The U.S. is also pushing a deal to fully normalize relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia. The New York Times reports the Biden administration's in talks with Saudi Arabia over a mutual defense treaty that would resemble military pacts the U.S. has with Japan and South Korea. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is reportedly also seeking U.S. help to develop a civilian nuclear program. While campaigning for president, Biden vowed to make MBS a pariah over the assassination of Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi and other human rights issues. In related news, Houthi negotiators and Saudi officials wrapped up 5 days of talks in Riyadh on a possible path to ending the war in Yemen. The Saudi-led U.S.-backed conflict has killed hundreds of thousands of people since 2015, with 80% of Yemen's population relying on humanitarian aid. Here in New York, world leaders continue to address the UN General Assembly. The addresses began yesterday. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky warned Russia's invasion poses a threat to all nations.
And it is a clear Russia's attempt to weaponize the food shortage on the global market in exchange for recognition for some, if not all, of the captured territories. Russia is launching the food prices as weapons. The impact spans from the Atlantic coast of Africa to the Southeast Asia, and this is the threat scale.
President Biden expressed ongoing support for Ukraine and condemned Russia's naked aggression. In his speech, Biden also called for global climate action, global AI, artificial intelligence regulations, managing competition with China, and urged the UN to back a security support mission to Haiti, as he called it, where gang violence has been surging. One day after a high-profile Iran-U.S. prisoner swap, the Iranian president, Ibrahim Raisi, told the UN General Assembly the U.S., quote, project to Americanize the world has failed, as he hailed a new world order. He also called on the U.S. to revive the Iran nuclear deal President Trump pulled the U.S. out of.
America should demonstrate its goodwill and genuine willingness to fulfill its commitments and conclude the path.
Outside the UN headquarters, protesters gathered to condemn Iran's crackdown on dissent and protests just after the first anniversary of the killing of Mahsa Amini. Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel called for major reforms to international economic institutions and national debts that have overwhelmingly harmed countries in the global south. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva also addressed the UN.
We will continue to criticize any attempt to divide the world into zones of influence and to reissue the Cold War. The UN Security Council is progressively losing its credibility. This fragility stems in particular from the actions of its permanent members who wage unauthorized wars in pursuit of territorial expansion or government change.
Lula's comments echoed calls for a change to the international order at this weekend's G77 summit as low- and middle-income countries met in Havana, Cuba. Among those addressing the G77 was Honduran President Xiomara Castro.
We are not pieces in a board that promotes dependency. Our nations must not keep on suffering the massive privatization of their territories.
In Washington, D.C., House Republicans remain mired in turmoil as infighting and threats by the far right push the government closer to an October 1st shutdown. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy delayed a key procedural vote Tuesday on a 30-day stopgap spending bill after opposition from members of the Freedom Caucus. Hours later, that hardline Freedom Caucus also blocked debate on a Pentagon spending bill in another blow to McCarthy. Meanwhile, House Democrats and some less extreme Republicans could work together to garner enough support for a spending bill that would bypass McCarthy and the far right's demand for massive spending cuts. In Pennsylvania, Democratic Governor Josh Shapiro announced Tuesday Pennsylvania will now automatically register eligible voters when they obtain or renew driver's licenses or ID cards.
We'll save taxpayers time and money, reduce the number of costly paper registrations, and streamline voter registration for Pennsylvanians. Look, this is common sense. You already provide proof of identity, residency, age, and citizenship at the DMV. All the information you need to register to vote.
Pennsylvania joins 23 mostly Democratic states and Washington, D.C., in having some form of automatic voter registration. Meanwhile, Democrat Lindsey Powell easily won a special election Tuesday in Pittsburgh, restoring the Democrats' one-seat majority in the Pennsylvania House. She's the first black woman to represent the predominantly white 21st District in Allegheny County. West Point's being sued over the military academy's race-based admissions policies. The lawsuit is spearheaded by the same anti-affirmative action group that sued Harvard and the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. The conservative Students for Fair Admissions won that landmark case before the U.S. Supreme Court in June, gutting race-conscious admissions policies at colleges and universities nationwide. But the ruling excluded military academies. And at least 20 indigenous leaders and climate activists were arrested Tuesday as actions demanding an end to fossil fuels continued during New York's Climate Week. Dozens of protesters swarmed the Bank of America Tower in Manhattan yesterday, blocking entrances as they chanted, "We need clean air, not another billionaire." The bank is one of the largest funders of oil, gas, and coal across the globe, as well as the leading financial backer of the contested Mountain Valley Pipeline. This is environmental activist John Beard of the Port Authority Community Action Network in Texas.
We refuse to be sacrificed any further on the altar of big oil, big gas, and big finance and BOA. We refuse to allow them to put profits over people and determine the lives and future of people in the Gulf South without them having any benefit from it and destroying the very planet upon which we all depend.
That's environmental activist John Beard of the Port Arthur Community Action Network in Texas. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman in New York with Democracy Now! Co-host Juan Gonzalez in Chicago. Hi, Juan.
Hi, Amy, and welcome to all of our listeners and viewers across the country and around the world.